we were children, they told us that ghosts weren't real, and that the misshapen monsters lurking in our closets were just figments of the imagination. But what if they were wrong? What if there is something lurking in the shadows of the night, unperceived by the physical senses? If you want to know the truth about the world in which you live, then enter, if you dare, into the room underneath the stairs.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the new revamped version of People Under the Stairs. And I am your new co-host, Kat Ward, and I have my other co-host here, Paul James Caiden. Should I do this as well? Paul, are you there?
God, no.
So today, since it's pretty much our pilot of the new revamped People Under the Stairs, I thought we could discuss how we first got into the paranormal and talk about our first paranormal experiences. So how does that sound to you, Paul?
Sounds good to me. Good topic. I have some tales to spin on this one for sure.
Perfect. Anything you want to say before we start our topic?
Yes, we were talking before the show. We wanted to dedicate our first episode to former co-host Stan Wanglund, but we're not, because he's a quitter, and when I see him again, I'm going to shoot him in the head with a BB gun.
And then he'll be drinking his coffee that has the X-Lax in it. Yeah, this goes out to Stan in loving memory. He is gone but not forgotten, but not gone in the way you think. He just left us. No, it's kind of funny though, Paul, because I was on your show a few times when you and Stan both had the show, and guest a few times and co-hosted once or twice. I never thought that I'd be taking over the reins. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's. I didn't think I would revamp the show. You know, it was just one of those things where we burnt out a little bit on the topic, and we were going to do a farewell show, but then we said, we're not going to do it, and it just got to be a little bit of a strain. Stan likes the paranormal, but he's not so eyeball deep into it, so he tries to keep like a certain balance in the topics, and it was just getting a little I think difficult to do that. So
it's understandable.
He decided and he's busy. He's got 14. Well, he had 14,000 jobs that he did. So he wanted to hang up one of the podcasts, and But then after a while, I said, I wouldn't mind still doing a paranormal show. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of different angles on subjects, and we got to talking on Messenger one day when you were offering condolences for the show.
Yeah. Said how much I missed it.
Are.
Yeah, I was really surprised when you asked, how about you co-host? And we started up again. I was really surprised. I was just like, sure. So I was honored that you asked. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I think it would be hard to find a decent co-host. A lot of people, I know some people in the paranormal field, and Stan was right. They want to talk about those same subjects over and over, podcast to podcast, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes you have to, go beyond, cryptids and Hatman, and kind of dig into some other bizarre aspects of the paranormal. Because I think people get a little burnt out on those things, and I didn't want to be a repeat of a repeat, with the co-host either.
Agreed. I also like topics like Mandela effect, which I still find fall under the category of paranormal, and vortex, strange things like that as well. So it branches out a little bit, I think, and opens a door for different points of views and different topics, I think.
Yeah, People Under the Stairs was paranormal, but basically paranormal and anything weird.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's strange, if it's paranormal, if it's anything that's kind of otherworldly or smacks of other dimensions or whatever, it's all fair game. And I think that's a good way to do a paranormal show rather than just sticking rigidly to those 5 or 10 topics that people do to death.
Agreed.
Because I love the paranormal and some of the shows I listen to, and I haven't listened to some for months because I go to listen. Oh, I wonder what so and so is talking about, and it is. I feel like I've had cheeseburgers for dinner far too many times, and now I want pizza.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was a time that I used to think the paranormal was strictly ghosts. And after a while, I thought, no, it's like, by definition, what is paranormal? And I started realizing, well, it could be cryptids, it could be UFOs and anything unexplained, pretty much. So then I kind of branched out a little bit more, and because my perspective changed, I made a lot of new, wonderful friends in the cryptid world, and Mandela effect. I had a woman on my show. She does conferences, and I just met so many more wonderful people branching out my topics.
There are, there's people, I think talking to people who have psychic abilities, mediums. You were talking about having somebody on the show that does remote viewing.
Yes.
So all of that, I think are fascinating topics. And sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's weird, and sometimes it's just fascinating what the human mind or the human spirit can do.
Totally agreed. So did you want, since I started, did you want to start with how you got into the paranormal? Or do you want me to jump in? Or
I'm going to say share your first experience, because mine is a little bit of an essay. It's a string of incidents that kind of tie together.
Gotcha.
And I want to try to keep it brief without hogging up the airtime, but
sure. Okay.
But I would say let's hear yours, because I'm curious myself. I never, I don't think I ever heard your story of what got you into all of this, paranormal investigating and doing podcasts.
Well, I grew up on the east coast of Canada, like you already know, and when I was 5 years old, I think. I can't remember how old. My parents and I moved into this 3-story apartment building. Very, very old building. The basement, it used to be heated by coal. There was a coal furnace in the basement. So you have an idea how old the building was. But by the time we moved in, they had changed it over to electric heat. So it was a 3-story apartment building. We lived on the top floor. Very creepy building. I remember, to this day, my father still says he remembers how I used to wake up with night terrors screaming, "The man in the closet, the man in the closet." But I remember from the age of, I want to say 5 till about the age of 13 when we lived in that apartment building. And I used to see the Hat Man. Now, this version was not the tall one that everyone talks about. He was about 4 feet tall, and I know that because I remember comparing his height with the dresser in my bedroom. So when you're a child, you just kind of look when you're frightened like that, you look all over the place to see if you could hide anywhere. And I was already in bed, but I used to see him quite often, but he never paid attention to me, thankfully. But I just remember being terrified. Later on, as an adult, I had a psychic tell me that he was actually there to protect me for other things that were in the apartment building. I don't know about that, but I really wish I could go back, because the apartment building has been torn down, and there's a parking lot there now, so it's not like I can go back and investigate, which I would love to do. But I used to see him quite frequently, and when we moved, I never saw him again, but I always thought, what was it? why was he there? Where's he from? Never saw any features. He was just, like the typical shadow person that everyone describes. No features at all. I didn't see glowing eyes or anything. He had the typical, what's that called, the bolero hat. And I don't know if it was a cape or that he was wearing, or a trench coat or something. But scared the bejesus out of me. And I remember listening to a podcast a few years ago called Paratruth Radio with Eric and Justin, their cousins. And I remember messaging Justin because they had someone on there talking about the Hat Man. And I never spoke to anybody about this experience until that moment. And he sent me an email replying saying, well, because I described to him that mine was the shorter version. Your guest was talking about the tall version. I wonder if there's any correlation. So he said, you have to check out this link. He sent me a link to YouTube, and this man used to see the short version of the Hat Man, and he decided he was going to recreate it. So he did, and all those childhood feelings came back, just whoosh. I looked at it and said, oh my God, that's what I used to see. And other people used to see it. I was amazed. So then I started wondering, well, how many other people have seen it? The same one as myself. But there's different variations. Some people say they see him with a timepiece in his hand. Some people has a walking stick. So I don't know if they're pretty much the same species, if you will, for lack of a better term. But that's the very first paranormal experience that I recall having, is that Hat Man. But growing up, I've had several others. And so the paranormal has always been very, very fascinating to me. And when we moved to the Ottawa Valley, a friend of mine had messaged me and said, hey, there's a woman looking to put a paranormal investigative team together. And she's just kind of like, anybody interested, give me a message. So I sent her a message, and we met at a local coffee shop here. And my husband says, you're actually going to go meet those people for coffee? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go see what they have to say. Of course, I used to watch all those most haunted shows and, Taps and all those other shows too, but never really did any formal investigating prior to that. So I went to meet them, and I said, well, if they're a bunch of wingnuts, I'll just say thank you for the coffee. Nice meeting you. Good luck. So, and I still jokingly say that, yes, they were a bunch of wingnuts, but I liked them, and I stayed on with the team. So we've been investigating for a few years together, and it's an amazing team. That Katie Turner is the founder. She's an amazing psychic medium, very, very talented. I've never met anyone so in tune in my entire life. She really is amazing. But and then I started the podcast Paranormal Heart, and now I'm started this one with you, People Under the Stairs. So that's pretty much the cliff notes.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's funny. Now, how old were you when you first saw this little Hat Man in your room?
I'm thinking around 5 years old was probably the first time that I saw him. And I saw him until we moved.
It's interesting because there's so many people, myself included, that probably between the ages of 4 and 5 saw something in their room. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was tall, sometimes it was short. And I have a tale, something that I always wanted to talk about on the old people under the stairs, but now we'll do it on the new. And we'll save that for next time. But I had an experience when I was about 4 or 5 years old, something that I saw in the room at night. And my brother, years before, had the same experience, but I never knew about it until I told him about mine. And he was like, oh my God, I remember being at my grandmother's house, in the living room, talking about like almost the same exact experience as something that was in our bedroom when we were kids. And maybe I'll see if he wants to be on the show and tell his version of it. I think it would be interesting for people to hear these stories. But I think when we're about that age, 4 or 5, that there's something out there that makes itself known to us for some reason. Is it to let us know it's there? Is it to sometimes enlighten us and sometimes to frighten us. Let us know maybe there is a light in the dark. I don't know.
Even study us. Who knows?
Because, my first paranormal experiences, bleeding into that, there isn't any one incident that made me interested in this. This is a lifelong thing. I remember being a little kid, literally before I could speak. I remember, graduating from the crib to the bed and feeling presences in the room at night and seeing, shadows, in the room. But I wasn't afraid of them. I felt like they were there watching over me. They were friendly. They were there, for me, not against me.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was later, I got a little older, my grandfather used to tell a lot of ghost stories, things that he saw. And I was a little kid. I hadn't even started school yet. And I was like absolutely fascinated. So imagine being, 3-4 years old and you start watching horror movies, the Blob,
Yeah.
whatever is on TV at that time. So it was all things ghosts, all things paranormal, all things scary. But up to that point, I didn't know I was supposed to be afraid of any of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what kind of changed the dynamic a little bit, because I never really saw anything scary. Although, I must say there were times when I was really little, when I had a lot of the positive experiences. Probably when I was about 3 years old, there would be times I would wake up in the night and I would kind of have that sense there was something in the room watching me that wasn't friendly. And I remember, covering up my head or, pulling the blankets up, over my eyes. So, I guess I did kind of feel that there was something lurking that maybe wasn't my friend.
Mm.
But I always had this notion, well, the good ones will protect me from the bad ones. That's what they're there for. That was always my thought.
Well, even at the young
But
age of 3.
yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
remember thinking about that. Oh, the good ones are there. They'll help me.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything there that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one that really, I mean, again, I being very young, seeing things, seeing people that weren't there, seeing the shapes in the night, just, nothing scary. But the weirdest one I ever saw was probably when I was about 11 years old. I remember being in the living room. My favorite show at that time was The Odd Couple with Jack Klugman and
Yep.
Tony Randall. I'm sure you're familiar with
Oh,
the
yeah,
show.
I used to watch it.
It was on Channel 11 every night at about it was like 5 or 6. There were like 2 episodes. And I remember sitting on the couch, and I was kind of sitting sideways with my back up against the arm of the couch, watching The Odd Couple. My brother was in our room doing whatever he was doing. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner, and my father wasn't home from work yet. And I remember sitting there watching The Odd Couple, and there was a noise next to my ear. It sounded like someone clicking their fingernails in my right ear. And, I remember, looking around, and, there was nothing there, and, continue watching, and it happens again. I look around, and there was a wall behind the couch, so I thought, well, maybe it was just something in the wall, or, a vibration from whatever my mother was doing. So I continue watching, and then suddenly I become aware of something like pushing at the hair on the back of my head. And I turn around and look behind me, and I see standing behind me in the living room, and it's dark except for the TV, is this thing that looked like it was shaped like an alien gray. It had kind of the big bulbous head,
Mm-hmm.
very skinny neck, very thin body, but it didn't have a face. I don't remember seeing a face. It was just that shape, and it was kind of the color of human skin, but it was really bright, like it was emanating some kind of light, and around it was this bright yellow aura. It was kind of zigzaggy, and it was just standing there behind me, swatting at the back of my head. And I saw this thing, and I remember, jumping up, jumping over the other end of the couch, running into the kitchen. There's a ghost in the living room, but and that was actually an event. I don't know what it was about that event that we experienced in that house. Me, my brother, my mother, my father, all of us. It was really like a lot of poltergeist kind of haunting activity. And, we'd been in that house for years. And yes, I've always seen things, some scary, a little scary, some not really scary. But this was creepy. Everybody started seeing things that were kind of unnerving. So I don't know what it was about that event, but that was one of the big ones that really, I was terrified and fascinated all at the same time, because now I'd seen, my first ghost, if you will.
That's amazing. That would have been terrifying yet intriguing at the same time, like you said.
Yeah, I remember being at my grandmother's house. All of us, my mother, my father, my brother, me, were all sitting there talking to my grandparents about all this crazy stuff that's happening in the house. And my mother saying, I thought the kids were crazy. They were just, their imagination. She's like, till one day, she was home from work, and she said she walked from the kitchen into the living room, broad daylight, all by, she was home alone. My father's at work, we're at school. And there was the shadow of a man sitting in the chair in the living room with his feet up on the footstool and his head was back. And she said she saw it plain as day. It was a man, but just a shadow. Mm-hmm. And she stood there looking at it, and it just kind of evaporated. So we all, she said it scared the hell out of her. She didn't know what it was, who it was, what was going on. But I remember hearing the stories, and again, it was scary, but also thinking, this is pretty cool, I wonder how it's all going to end,
Yeah. I remember growing up, I was really the only one that was into creepy things and ghosts, and all my friends used to make fun of me, and after a while I just stopped talking about paranormal stuff. And now it seems to be the cool thing to talk about. And now my old school friends message me sometimes, "Hey, what do you think about this?" So it's funny how things have turned around, where the used to get made fun of, and now you're the go-to person.
It is, back in the day. I guess it was just one of those things that, everybody, it was like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, mm-hmm. A ghost, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But the stories are everywhere, I remember being in, what was this? I think this was like the second grade, and there was this, kid in my class. His name was Wayne Greaves. Very quiet kid. He was one of the smarter kids, he'd always aced all the little mm-hmm. tests that we had taken, very well-mannered kid. And I remember him telling a group of us one day, and he wasn't really that outspoken if he didn't know you, but, there was, some of us were talking one day, and somebody mentioned a ghost. I don't remember what they said. And I remember him saying that one night he was sleeping in the basement, because they had a finished basement in his parents' house. And he woke up, and he saw a shape, like it was kind of glowing, I guess, across the room. And it started moving closer. And when it stepped up, to the couch, I guess, where he was sleeping, and he said it was an Indian woman, full Indian, dress. And she was just standing there, like, looking at him. And I was like, well, what did you do? And he's like, well, I ran upstairs, yelling for my mother.
Yeah. Interesting to find out how his mother reacted. Did she believe him, or just dismiss it like most parents do with their kids?
Yeah, he didn't really say, but, he wasn't the kind of kid to make up stories, like that. And, he was dead serious about it. He said he never slept in the basement again.
Oh, wow. I think the thing that fascinates me the most about paranormal is the older I got, I started realizing that everyone around the world, no matter what culture, what religion, whatever, everyone has some kind of a ghost story or a cryptid story or whatever. And to me, that's fascinating. I mean, if it's just a certain amount of people in a certain location, maybe, but everyone has it. And so there has to be something there.
They do. Everybody does, and it's funny if you talk to most people who, say, well, they're atheists. They don't really believe there's an afterlife or anything out there. If you ask them, they'll all say they had a paranormal experience, but they don't know how. Well, what do you think that was? Oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah, my
So
favorite.
even people who,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even people who are hardened non-believers in anything, spiritual or paranormal, will tell you that they had, saw something that they couldn't explain.
Everyone that I've ever spoken to who are podcasters, investigators, psychics, whatever, we all have at least one person we've encountered where they say, I don't believe in all that crap. But then once they find out what you're into, they kind of take you aside and say, well, there was this one time. Can I talk to you about it? And
Yeah.
it's just very intriguing. And now I get people telling me, you expect me to believe that there's ghosts, and I'm like, no, I don't expect you to believe it. I know what I've experienced, and I know something's out there. If you choose to believe it or not, I'm not trying to convince you. But if you want to talk to me about it, that's great.
Yeah, there's always that one time, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of things that I have seen, especially living in this where I grew up. It's called Middletown, New York, in Orange County, New York, here in the States. And there were so many of us growing up there who thought this place was cursed. There was something wrong with it, and the whole place is on Indian burial ground.
Oh, wow.
There's even every year, if you look up the Orange County Fair in Middletown, New York, there's what they call the Orange County Fair curse, and that was every year during the fair there would be the most violent thunderstorm and torrential rain of the entire
Really?
summer.
Huh.
And come to find out why they called it that was because the place where they had the Orange County Fair was an old Indian burial ground. So they said, and there's even a big statue, at least there was, of an Indian as you drove by the fairgrounds. You could see it from the road, and then you understood why that was there, because it was an old Native American burial ground. But that could have had something to do with it, because the whole area, really was, from what I understand, it was Indian land. There was a lot of burial grounds that were just built over schools, fairgrounds, office buildings. But the stuff that happened there, was just off the charts. It's like Amityville horror style.
Oh, wow.
And I've seen so many things, personally. People that ask me to come check things out in their houses, or things that myself and friends just kind of stumbled into. And I have some stories I never really talked about, or maybe mentioned briefly in some podcasts, when I first started out. But I'd like to bring some of those topics to the show later, and see what what you might have to say about them, because this stuff was just crazy.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear
I
them.
don't think any normal person would have lived in that town, any longer than they had to.
Yeah.
If they were afraid of that type of thing, I think they would have bailed first chance they got.
I remember, I don't know why it just popped into my head. It doesn't even relate to what we just spoke about, but when I was about 7 years old, I remember my parents and I going to, what's it called? Lunenburg, I think it's called. It used to be an old military, it's just, you can go to these places and you have tour guides and all that, like a historical site. And my parents and I went to Lunenburg one summer, and one of the buildings that we went to, it was just my parents and I and a guide, and we went to this one building, and there was caution tape and everything, and the tour guide's giving us information about the particular building that we're in, and I heard footsteps coming up the hall, so I'm looking, and I start walking towards, there's caution tape that you're not supposed to go up, and the tour guide says, where are you going? And I said, oh, I hear footsteps. I was just curious. And she goes, no, there's nobody in the building. So she says, that must be our ghost that you hear, thinking that will deter me from going to investigate. Here I am, 7 years old. I'm like, there's ghosts in this building? And I wanted to go check it out. And my parents are like, no, we're all going to stay together. But that's, I find a lot of people like us who get into the paranormal as adults usually have an encounter like that where you're supposed to be afraid, but you're more intrigued and you want to find out more, even though you're a little kid. Yeah, it's a little spooky, but it's like, I want to find out more. Have you ever had any experiences like that when you were young? Like you should be afraid?
Oh, many of them, especially,
Yeah.
During the episode with the alien gray-looking guy behind the couch and everything that happened afterwards. I mean, I don't even know how many people, myself included, now that I'm older, if something like that happened, would your reaction be the same? Would you still be curious, or would you be like, holy crap, I'm out of here,
Yeah, because as we know, we're always told growing up that you're not supposed to be believing in all this stuff. They don't exist. And if they do, they're scary. You have to stay away from it. So I think maybe that's why a lot of times people kind of go running the other way, because they don't understand and they're taught not to ask questions. But then you have the curious ones like us who want to know more.
There are. I remember asking my grandfather, because to me back then he was the paranormal expert. He really wasn't, but he had so many stories that, I guess you thought, he knew what he was doing. But I remember when all of this was going on, the hauntings in the house or whatever it was, I remember him asking what I should do if I see, something strange that's creepy. So his advice is, well, when you see something or you see a ghost, you ask it, what in the name of God do you want of me? And it will answer you. If you ask it that, it really has no choice. It will answer.
I've heard that.
So I'm like, great, now I know what to do. So one afternoon, it's after school. Again, I don't know where my brother was. He wasn't home. My parents were taking a nap, allegedly.
Yeah.
Because my father did go to work really early in the morning, so sometimes he would take like an evening nap for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the living room all by myself watching what was then the 4:30 movie, and 4:30 movie, it had various things. Sometimes it was Sci-Fi Week, sometimes it was Godzilla Week, or whatever, different themes, thrillers, mysteries. And I don't know what was on the 4:30 movie, but I wanted to watch it. It was, semi-interesting. So again, I sat down on this couch. It was like this red kind of velvety material couch that we had. And I'm watching TV, and they always seem to like want to mess with me when I'm watching TV. And I hear the sound of paper like crinkling next to my head. So I turn and look. It was to my left. And the TV guide, I don't know if they probably had them in Canada, the little digest-sized booklet that had the days of the week, and it told you what was on TV, hour to hour.
Yep.
So I turn and I look, and the TV guide is levitating next to my head. And
Wow.
it's kind of open, and it's shaking, like a bird flapping its wings.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I look at it, it's hovering there for a minute, and it just drops down to the couch. So, me and my young wisdom, I'm probably, I think I was in the 6th grade by then. I just get up, turn off the TV, and go in my room, no big deal.
Hmm.
I'll just make believe I didn't see that.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It's good.
So, and I remember just as it happened, I remember there was like a big kind of like semi truck that went down the road. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe somehow it was the vibration of the truck because it was really loud. Made the TV guide kind of,
Yeah, that's one heck of a
levitate on the
vibration.
But I go into my room and I just sit on the bed. And my brother and I had bunk beds at that time, but they weren't stacked at this particular moment. They were side by side in the room. So I sit down on my bed, and all of a sudden I'm just overcome with this feeling like somebody is standing at the foot of the bed just looking at me. And it wasn't a friendly look. I felt very, the energy in the room changed very quickly. It was very oppressive. Like something mean was there looking at me. So I say to myself, yeah, this is as good as time as any. Let me try, my grandfather's technique. So I look at the foot of the bed and I ask, what in the name of God do you want of me? And I didn't get an answer, at least not a verbal answer, but something literally picked up the foot of the bed and just dropped it.
Wow.
And, at that moment, I just shot out of the room, broke in on my parents, It's a good thing they were actually taking a nap. I was like, you guys got to get the hell up,
Because that would have been a scarier scenario.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe that's why it was angry. But yeah, that was definitely...
What did they say when you told them?
Well, naturally, they just kind of, they want to brush it off because that was their thing, don't, there's weird things happening in the house, but, you don't want to act too concerned because the kids will get scared, they'll get worried. So they had more of the, it was probably just, are you sure, But yeah, because I saw I was sitting on the bed and something picked the bottom of the bed up and, dropped it. And, I felt the vibration. I heard it hit the floor. So that was very scary, but again, something that left me with a lot of curiosity as to what is this? Where did these things come from, or where did it come from? Why is it here all of a sudden?
You know what it was?
And
when they tried to show you the TV guide, they're trying to tell you what they wanted to watch, and when you weren't obliging, they got mad. Hey, I want to watch what I want to watch.
It could have been something scarier on Channel 4,
Yeah. Wow. I've never seen anything move. To me, this is my holy grail. The only time I've ever... Well, that's not entirely true. When we lived in Alberta for... How long were we there? 4 years? 3 years? Something like that? 3 or 4 years. Anyways, when we moved into our house, my daughter and I automatically knew there was something in the house. I later found out that it was the husband of the previous owner who had passed quite a few years prior. And I already knew what he looked like, and I was able to validate that with neighbors. Anyway, so I'm lying in bed, my husband's sound asleep, and I'm thinking, okay, when are you going to show yourself to me? And it was a very, very old house. It had carpet on carpet in the bathroom because that's what you used to do back in the day. Had wallpaper everywhere. It was the house was structurally sound, but it needed a lot of updating. Nice house. And the bedrooms, the closets had the sliding doors, and then they had the cupboards up on top where you had these little doors that you had to actually pull, and then when you close them, they click shut. So there's no way that they can open because you really had to tug on them to open. So when I thought, when are you going to show yourself to me? All of a sudden I heard, and I looked up, and didn't one of the little cupboard doors open? I smiled, got up, closed the cupboard door, and I just kind of looked around in the room and just nodded and whispered, thank you. And that's the only time I've ever seen anything move.
Well, we've seen a lot of things move. I remember one time my brother was in the bathtub and the shampoo bottle just started rocking back and forth.
Oh, wow.
That was one of his experiences. I remember him saying, and I was I thought it was kind of funny because he's like, I thought it was maybe just a draft. So he's like in the bathtub, like reaching over, blowing on the shampoo bottle to see if it'll move.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Yeah, every time we go on an investigation and a client tells us, that chair moved or this moved, I'm always like, oh, please let that happen while we're investigating. Because like I said, to me, it's the holy grail. I want to see a chair move. I don't want to see it flying at me. I just want to see it move. Yeah, it's the only time I actually saw anything move on its own was when that cupboard opened up by itself. But so I consider you fortunate to seeing many things move. Don't know if you think that way, but
Yeah, I mean, I do now. Looking back, of course, it was scary. To go through some of those things, and you definitely slept at night with the covers pulled up. Even to this day, it's like a habit. Not that I'm like afraid of the dark anymore, but when I go to bed, I pull the covers up, over my ear, just to the corner of my eye.
yeah.
And that's how I'm comfortable, because that's how I slept all the time as a kid growing up, because there was always some weird stuff, going on. And, I just wanted to make sure that I was well out of sight, wouldn't hear anything, wouldn't see anything.
Yeah.
Nothing could make eye-to-eye contact with me if it was next to the bed. And I remember I was fairly young, but me and my brother, we were comic book kids. And I remember going fishing with my grandfather one time. There was this little convenience store where my grandparents lived, and then there was kind of this garden supply store. It was a little town, and then there was a path behind the garden supply store. It was an agway, and there was a little creek down there that we would go fishing. And every once in a while, he'd say, "Oh, let's go on a picnic. We'll go to the store. It was called Jimmy's Market. Let's go to Jimmy's Market. We'll get some candy and soda, and we'll go on a picnic. We'll go fishing." And I remember going one day, and there, he bought us, a couple of comic books, and there was this one. I can't remember the name of it. It might have been Tales of the Weird or Tales, Strange Tales or something of that nature. But the cover of the book, and this was something that haunted me for a long time. The cover of this book was a person laying in their bed, and in the cover art they were kind of like looking at you, and behind them was a window, and outside the window was this kind of creepy ghost, and its hand was coming through the window, reaching for the guy.
Oh.
So
yeah.
anytime I slept, by a window, which was anywhere you positioned the beds in our bedroom as a kid, the head of your bed was by a window. Mm-hmm. It was always like, shit, something's gonna reach through that damn window.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, in that apartment building that I was telling you about, I remember one night I was sleeping with my arm, and I still remember my right arm and my right leg hanging off the side of the bed, and I woke up and my right arm was hurting. So another time I screamed for my parents. Talking to my dad now, it's a wonder they got any sleep at all, because when we were living in that apartment building, because it almost seemed like nightly I'd be screaming, there's something in my room or something happened, right? And so they come into my room, turn the light on, and I said, my arm hurts. And I looked and I had scratches on my forearm. Have no idea how that happened. But I do recall seeing the Hat Man that same night, and I haven't had that experience with the scratches on my arm again. Now, I feel that the Hat Man was there to get rid of whatever scratched me. So then later on, when that psychic told me that Hat Man was there to protect me, I kind of started thinking of that, and it's like, well, maybe it was, because he never really interacted with me. He just kind of like walked around the room, going about his business, not really paying attention to me. So I don't know. But to this day, though, and I'm in my early 50s, I still cannot sleep with my limbs hanging off the side of the bed just because of that one incident.
Yeah, it can be challenging when something like that happens.
Yeah, and I remember my
It,
dad looking to see if there's any nails on the bed frame or anything, because it was a wooden bed frame, and there wasn't anything sticking out. So we really have no idea. And I don't remember how many scratches I had on my arm. I've had people ask me. I don't remember. I just remember having the scratches. But yeah, it was kind of strange.
I know if I like in the summertime, it's kind of warm. You don't sleep with blankets on. Sometimes I wake up in the night, I'm not covered up, and you're half asleep, and I still think to myself, geez, I better put some blankets on myself for because I'm kind of vulnerable,
Yeah,
something could come
yeah.
along, and I'm like, well, what am I thinking? That's what the hell.
Have you ever seen that meme where there's this kid sleeping? He's got the covers on him, and there's these two ghosts, and one ghost is going to scare the kid, and the other goes, "No, Jeffrey, the blankets." It's like that's deterring them. And he's like, "Oh yeah, right. It's the blanket rule. You can't break it."
Yeah, for some reason it worked. I remember at one point when I was a kid, when I would turn over in the bed. I didn't want to see anything on the way from flipping to one side to another.
Yep, me too.
So I would cover up my head, turn over, and then pull the blankets down. So
Now, I would have my eyes closed, and then once I got into the position that I wanted to be in, then I kind of crack open my eyes a little bit. It's like, okay, good, there's nothing there. I can go back to sleep.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind
I
of
covered up
funny.
my head and closed my eyes, and I would peek out and kind of open one eye and look. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's clear. I don't know if I told you this part, though. Again, in the apartment building, because I used to have so many night terrors. My father, one time, it was daytime, I had a big walk-in closet, and he says, okay, he takes things logically. So he takes me in the closet, he goes, here, I just want to show you. There's nothing here at night that isn't here during the daytime, trying to help me, right? Me being me, I looked at him and I said, you mean it's here in the daytime too? And then I just remember him going, oh, what did I do? He didn't think it would blow up in his face like that. He was just trying to say, the same things are here in the daytime as there are in the nighttime. So there's no ghosts, you're good. So there's no man in your closet. It's like, yeah, that kind of backfired. And apparently, I was talking to my dad a few months ago, and we were talking about that, and he says, yep, it took me many months to get you not being afraid of the daytime, too. I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah, what is it about the closet that we
I
automatically go
know.
there? That there's something in there that's watching us or going to come out?
Yep. I remember one investigation we did, and I walked in. I like to go into investigations not knowing much about the case, and walked into one of the room, and it was 3-story building. It was a really old building. Walk into the one of the rooms, and all of a sudden I just looked at the closet, and I'm like, yeah, there's something about this room and that closet, right? And the client says yes. So it's like, okay, we're just starting to set up our equipment to try and figure out where we're going to put everything, and then. Katie said there was some kind of portal in the closet. And then I remember looking at her and saying, why is it always the closet? Like, I don't know. It's really intriguing.
There is, and it makes you wonder. And you tell that story, and it makes me think. When I was 16 years old, I went to live with my grandparents, and they had a lot of stuff. I sometimes wonder if some of the spirits and ghosts and weird creepy things that I saw and my brother saw, almost like a generational curse, spirits that attach to a family or
Mm-hmm.
follow people,
Yep.
because they had some really humdinger things, and their house was always, again, my grandparents were great people, we loved to be there as kids, but it was just scary. And there was a friend of the family that visited one time, and she ended up dying of leukemia, and she thought she was in the house when she died. And I remember at 16 years old, there was this one room, and I want to make a whole podcast on my grandparents' house. but her name was Jane, and there was this one back bedroom that she slept in. And a lot of creepy things happened in that room that we'll, talk about in a later show. But whenever I would go in there, I was automatically drawn to the closet. I would always look at that little closet in the corner, that brown wooden door, and just feel like, man, I'm like 16, 17 years old, and I would just, get the shivers, like something's in there. And one day, I'm downstairs talking to my grandmother, and she goes, just out of the blue, she goes, one day I got to get upstairs, and this is like years and years later, because I was a little kid when this family friend Jane had died. And she goes, one day I got to get upstairs in that back bedroom and clean out that closet. She goes, did you know that all this time, she goes, some of Jane's clothes are still in there?
No way.
And I was like, oh shit. So it was just weird that I always looked at that closet, and then, turns out that some of her clothes were in there.
That's amazing. It kind of makes me wonder, are we creating some kind of a portal in closets because we naturally think it's a creepy place, so we're creating it ourselves, or is it really there and we're sensing it? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, and again, this is something I don't want to give any spoilers, but the ghost of Jane in that back room, stories for another day to those who listen to the show.
Yes.
Some really scary shit, and if it was Jane, she was not happy.
No. Wow. I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, even just a little hint of it, and I didn't know this when I lived with my grandparents, but I heard it a couple times because where I slept, the bathroom was right across the hall, and this was like an old house, like over 100 years old, and it was me and my grandfather, and there was one of my uncles that was stayed with my grandparents at that time. And when you came out of the bathroom, there was this kind of swath of floorboards. I mean, you couldn't get around them unless you tried to jump over them. But they were very creaky. So if somebody came out of the bathroom, you always heard. It was like very loud.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard it downstairs if somebody was in the bathroom.
Oh wow.
Because that's how I could tell. My grandfather would go upstairs, and I'd be in the living room downstairs. I'd be like, oh man, I gotta, go to the bathroom. And then all of a sudden you'd hear, you're like, crap, he's going in there,
Yeah.
But I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and hear the toilet flush, but nobody would ever leave the bathroom. You wouldn't hear those boards creak. No footsteps. And come to find out that at one point, my grandfather and my uncle, both, at separate times, had gone to the bathroom in the middle of the night and said, they saw Jane coming out of the bathroom.
Oh wow.
So when I heard those stories, I'm older now, and if I could help it, I did not go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So I don't want to see Jane coming out of the bathroom.
Yeah, I've lived in a few houses where the floors are creaky no matter what you did, unless you took a running jump, to avoid them.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, all these things combined and more, really what kind of gave me the fascination, and there were positive experiences too, as far as spiritual things and angels. I mean, you know a little bit about that backstory.
Yes.
Things that I've encountered. So I really think, sadly for me, I think I was born with, and there were a lot of people in my family that were, what you would call seers. They could see spirits, hear spirits. They had that extra psychic sense. And my mother was pretty sensitive as well, so I think I got it from both sides of the family.
Mm-hmm.
But over time and over the years, I shut it down a little bit, and I really wish that had been something that was more nurtured when I was a kid, because God knows what I would have been able to see and tap into, you know, if it was nurtured and grown at a young age.
Hmm. Yeah, I was
Because
fortunate. Go ahead.
I was going to say there was stuff everywhere, and if there was something, in a house, relative, friend, uh, I would either sense it, see it, or hear it in some aspect.
I was very fortunate that my mother was sensitive, and she believed in that, and it runs in the family. And on my father's side, we have gypsies way back. So I also come by it honestly on both sides of the family. And my mom, I remember her always saying, "Did you hear that? Or you saw that too, right?" And I used to always think, why is she asking that? Because, yeah, I believed in the paranormal and everything, but I never was into it as much as I am now, and know as much as I do now. So it makes a lot of sense that she was probably seeing and hearing things that nobody else could. And growing up back in the day, they used to always say, "Oh, you're crazy." So that's probably why she was trying to validate with the rest of the family. It's like, please tell me you saw that or heard that, And sometimes my dad and I would be like, "No." Or sometimes it would be like, "Yeah, we did." She goes, "Okay, good." And it made no sense until quite a few years ago. Then it's like, oh, okay, that does make sense now. But so I was never made to feel, when I would have those night terrors, my parents never made me feel like it was just a dream or it was just a nightmare. They would talk me down, of course, but they never made me feel like I shouldn't be feeling crazy. It was just one of those things. So very fortunate.
Yeah, my family believed in it, but I think they were afraid of it. They didn't understand it. And then at a certain age, getting into kind of organized religion, and you're told all that kind of stuff is evil.
Yeah.
So that was really when my mother kind of put it on the back burner. She was really fascinated with it for a while. But then once she kind of went down that path, I think she had the idea, there was that guilt trip, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't have these experiences and these premonitions. But she could read a person, very well. She'd meet a person for the first time and be like, "Watch out for this person. He's this, he's that, he's that, blah, 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 blah," and she was always right.
Yep.
And I can pretty much do the same thing. I can meet a person. "Oh, weren't they nice?" "No, that person was a creep."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how can you say that? And sure enough, they turn out to be, something wrong.
You go with your feelings.
Not that you're judging people, but you just know there's something underneath. Like, man, this person is not your friend. They're not my friend. They're not,
Yep.
anybody's friend.
My mom is from a French Catholic background, and my mom's from a family of 13 kids. And so I have a lot of cousins. And I remember quite a few years ago, I have a cousin that messaged me one day, and he was very, very spooked. And he kept telling me, all my life I see things or hear things, and he never really spoke about it to anybody in particular, but he knew I was into this kind of stuff. And he goes, "What do I do?" And I said, "Oh, well, you're just like the rest of the family." He goes, "What do you mean?" He didn't know that it kind of runs in the family. I said, "Yeah, my mom, your aunt, used to be able to talk to her grandfather without being in the same room or even in the same building. They used to communicate that way, and she would tell all her friends, and then she realized, oh, nobody else does that, so she stopped talking about it." But she said when he passed away, was in the hospital, he went to tell her goodbye, and then she went to wake up her parents and said, "Grandfather passed away." He says, "I was just talking to him." She's like, No, he's in the hospital." And she goes, "No, I'm telling you, he came to see me and say goodbye." Then the phone rings, and it was a hospital to say that he had passed away. And then they kind of looked at my mom. But I said, "Yeah, you come by it honestly, cousin. Like, it's in the family." He never knew. So it made him feel better after that.
Yeah, and I love those kind of stories, because there's so many people, especially little kids, that have had those same things. a family member that's been sick or, not doing well. And they'll tell their parents, "Oh, I just saw so and so in my room last night," and
Yeah.
or and they came to say goodbye. "Oh, what are you talking about?" And then moments later, that phone call comes. So I think that's a really just a really great piece of evidence that there's so many people that have had that kind of thing happen. That shows us that there is, a world beyond this one. There is life beyond this life, and it's just like an awesome confirmation for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when the kids used to wake me up and say, there's something in my bedroom, and I would go in and I would ask them, the next day, well, can you describe it to me? How did you feel? I didn't say, oh, it was a nightmare, go back to bed. We'd stay up for a little bit and chat, and then I'd search the room and I said, okay, well, it's not here now. I said, do you still see it or hear it? And they'd say, no, it's gone. I said, okay. And then the next day I'd go and I'd sage the house, and then they wouldn't have any more nightmares. But I used to always say, can you describe it? How did you feel? Was there any smells? So now growing up, my daughters accepted it more than my son. He just doesn't want to have anything to do with it. She believes in it, and I think my son just kind of shuts it off. He's like, yeah, whatever. But, again, I never really made the kids feel like, oh, you just had a nightmare. Well, what if it wasn't?
Yeah.
You have to discuss these things, in my opinion, anyways. You don't want to scare your children. Just ask them a few little questions, and take it from there.
And always make sure they have copious amounts of garlic at the windows and crucifixes around the bed.
Well, they have crucifixes in their room, so. But yeah, every once in a while, even in the house that we're in, like every house we've been into, I'd tell my husband, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to sage, the house doesn't feel right. Okay. So, and then my son's like, really? You got to do that in my room too? I'm like, yes. Open up your closets. Everything has to, it's not just your room. I got to do your closet too. And then, but it annoys my son. He's 16, anything annoys him. But, oh yeah, when it's time to sage, I just tell the family, yep, house doesn't feel right. Okay. Especially if I find that everyone seems to be more angry than usual. It just feels negative in the house, or, it's like, why are you so crabby? Why am I yelling back at you? I don't know. It's like, okay, time to sage. And then everything's calm. So, I don't know.
Awesome. Well, my friend and new co-host, I think we're about time we should wrap this puppy up.
I think so too.
Let our listeners get back to their own scary lives.
Yes. I just want to say to the listeners that if there's any particular topic that you'd like us to discuss, send us a message. Where can you be found, Stan? Stan. Oh my God, he must be thinking about us. Get out of my head, Stan.
Well,
blast you.
Well, Kat, you can reach me at S. Wangland.
Paul, my apologies. It's that blasted Stan, okay. I'm telling you.
He's haunting us. He's in the damn closet as we speak. But
he's the Hat Man.
But, folks can reach me at nocturnalmagic@gmail.com. That's my email. It's all one word, nocturnal magic with a C @gmail.com. Or they can find me on Facebook and Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel called Journey into Spiritualism. And, folks can write if they have a subject that they'd like to hear us discuss. Or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, if there's anybody out there listening and you've had something really strange happen to you that you can't explain, and maybe you've never really talked about it with anybody else, and you want answers or just want to, knock the subject around, you're welcome to drop either one of us a line and come on the show and talk about it. This is all about just discussion, and exploration. So feel free to reach out.
Exactly. Yeah, because I find when a lot of people listen to shows like this, then they don't feel so alone because they know they're having, other people are having experiences too. But I'm on Twitter. You can look for me at Kat, that's KATW, Ghost Hunt. And the email address I have right now is paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram too, but I can't remember what my handle is on there. Drop either one of us a line or both of us and tell us your thoughts. You want to be a guest, like Paul said. Whatever the case, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, my fellow co-host. This was awesome.
It was, and we're going to get scarier and scarier.
Yes, we are.
We're gonna make Stan's dream come true, and we're gonna summon demons.
We're just gonna summon Stan. I think Stan's
that gag coffee cup.
Yeah, yeah.
That says it was the kids in the pentagram that says "Let's summon demons."
Yeah. I think
always wanted to get that for Stan for Christmas.
Oh, really? You should. I think Stan's going to be our spooky mascot now.
Yeah, we should get a picture of him and get one of those apps that turn you into a zombie, and turn Stan into a zombie or something, and have him be our mascot, like Iron Maiden, that the metal band has Eddie. We'll have Stan.
We'll just take whatever cryptid or spooky creature and put his face on it and post that every week. We love you, Stan.
It's the hat Stan. It's the big Stan.
Oh, jeepers. Okay, well, thanks so much. And we're not sure how often we're going to have this on, if it's going to be once a month or twice a month. This is still kind of new. We're putting everything together, but we will keep you all apprised. And thanks for tuning in, and tell everybody about us. Please.
Yes.
Don't make us get Stan to go talk to you.
It's your homework.
Yes, your homework. Thanks so much, Paul. You take care.
You too, and thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Same ghost time, same ghost channel. People Under the Stairs would like to extend a special thank you to purpleplanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on People Under the Stairs are those of the host and participants.